Hello, welcome to the Bigger Truth Show. I am Scott McMahon, and I am excited about today's show. We're going to be talking about the Michigan Republican Party. In Michigan, I saw it was some sort of analysis that they looked at each of the swing states, and they determined somehow the odds of President Trump winning or determining the outcome of the presidential election based on which candidate won each state. And so and Michigan had the highest rate, what that meant is that if whoever wins Michigan is most likely to win the general election of any state in the whole country. Whoever wins Michigan is most likely to win the 270 electoral votes. And so Michigan is obviously extremely important. All of the swing states are important. Every state is important. Every county is important. Everything's important. However, Michigan is particularly important in that it's more determinative than any other state as far as how the election is likely to go. And so today I'm going to focus on Michigan and what's happening within the Republican Party. There's a lot to be concerned about, and there is also good news as well. I'm going to have a little later in the show, I'm going to have a very special guest. He's one of my closest friends. His name is Joe Brandis, and I'm super excited to have him on. He is doing some very good work in his township, in his city and precinct. And so I'm really excited about what he has to share, because I think that he's demonstrating some true leadership, and he's also showing us exactly what the Republican Party should be about. So I very much welcome your comments and feedbacks and your questions even as we go, but I'm going to dig right in. So first, you might notice something's different. I got a new hat, and I love this hat. It's a trucker hat. It's a little different than the dad cap. I still got that right here, but this one I'm very excited about. It's got the new logo for the show. And I got some feedback, and I've got a new merch store up. It's biggertruth.myshopify.com, biggertruth.myshopify.com. And you can get this hat and shirts and hoodies and all kinds of stuff there. Cell phone case. And a portion of whatever you spend here ends up helping support the show and supporting me and helping me to continue this work. So I really appreciate your help. And I've also got this shirt that I've ordered. I can't wait to get it, of Ivan Raiklin as Mini-Me. And that's that's one of my favorites. So, and there's more coming. I've got my AI virtual assistant has helped me create some other images, and I'm looking forward to sharing those on the merch store as well. So I appreciate your help and your support. And the other thing is, at my Substack, if you have not subscribed to my Substack, I have now well over 100 articles and episodes in my archives. And some of them I think are a lot of them I think are really, really important. And they're only available to my paid subscribers. So after it's been on up for free for about a month or so, then it goes into the archive. And and for $5 a month, that's another way. That's the most direct way and best way to support me. So I really appreciate your support and your help. And let's go ahead and move on. So this picture right here really sets the table, I believe. And I'm going to make it full screen so you can see it. This is from just a few months ago. You can see in the green jacket with his back to us is David Clements. And I have talked about him quite a bit, because this meeting right here was a Gideon 300 meeting. Now, Gideon 300, I did another show about this, and I'll link to it in my show notes. But Gideon 300 is an organization run by David Clements and Joel Altman, where they train people how to do things like a Saul Alinsky de-arrest drill. It's Saul Alinsky methods for how to take over your county commissioner meeting, or your clerk, or perhaps your polling place, And so they teach de-arrest drills, and part of the de-arrest drill is to surround the person that is being targeted by the police or the group of people. What's interesting here is I have three individuals circled. On the left, of course, is Christina Caramo, and I'll get more into her. The one in the middle with the pink shirt and the hairdo like mine is Joel Studebaker, who was her chief of staff. And then right next to him, with his face kind of down and in the shadows, is Mr. Ken Byer, and I will be talking more about him as well. But this is just, this happened here in Michigan. David Clements and Joel Altman have been traveling all across the country separately, showing David Clements' propaganda film that's a straight up emotional manipulation, election integrity, disinformation film, trying to convince people that the machines are hopelessly rigged, which I do not believe is the case. There are vulnerabilities in the machines, but they're not rigged in the sense that the outcome of the election is predetermined. If that were the case, then they wouldn't be engaging in all the disinformation and the psyops and everything on the left. The mainstream media wouldn't be as they are, and they wouldn't have replaced Joe Biden with Kamala Harris, because they were doing just fine with Joe Biden. And they were they being the deep state, communist cabal, whatever, they were really running the show. So they were doing just fine with Joe Biden, but they replaced him with Kamala because they thought it was more likely that they could win. And so that right there just proves that the machines are not hopelessly rigged. I've talked about that issue at length, but let's go ahead and move on. So this right here, this is an image from the state convention, the Michigan State Convention, just a few weeks ago. And right in the middle with the black hair, if you can see her, she's got a tan shirt. You can't see her face, but that is Christina Caramo, the disgraced former chair of the Michigan Republican Party, who helped me to launch my career here with Bigger Truth Media, because she was with a report that I did, an in-depth investigative report based on 5 whistleblowers that came public with me for the first time, describing how a shadow operator named Mike Labadie was controlling Christina Caramo and using her to destroy the state party from within. So this picture is really important, and I'm sharing this right now because in this picture, this is photographic evidence that Christina Caramo was voting as she was kneeling here during a standing vote. So she didn't want to be viewed as standing to vote, and then she later stood when it was time to stand for the vote that she wanted to vote, and which is very significant because she was not a delegate, so she had no legal right to vote. She claims to be election integrity expert, and yet here she is illegally voting. And she was asked by the chair to stop, and she continued anyways, and the chair of the convention. And so she was asked to stop. She did it anyways. She refused to leave, and so they had to call the police to remove her. I did talk about this a little bit, but what's interesting about this is that all of these people are surrounding her. They are doing a Gideon 300 de-arrest drill. Now I'm going to show a video right now from let me find it here. I'm going to show a video right now from a Joe Altman training. So it's the same essential training that David Clements held, as we can see here from the fruit. I mean, they're surrounding her, and they continue to surround her to prevent the police from having access to her, make it very difficult. And Ken Byer actually told Joe Altman and David Clements when he was on their show that they did a Gideon 300 drill, that they practiced Gideon 300 there at the state convention. So this is a picture of her voting illegally and practicing Gideon 300 at the state convention. So here is
coming to arrest your sisters, because we are brothers and sisters. No, we are also not violent. And just because the police are going to make a bad choice doesn't mean that we do. Okay? We do not let somebody's bad behavior dictate our behavior. Okay? But they're coming to arrest. We're all brothers and sisters. We are brothers and sisters in Christ. So they're going to come right now, and they're going to try and arrest these 2 ladies who are your sisters. If your sister's up here, what do? You surround them. So everyone, as you call the police, and then, listen, it's got to happen like this. Like, no. You build, everyone, come on, get out, stop this way. Build a large wall around them. This is a big deal, come on.
Okay, so this is a Saul Alinsky training right here. This is a Antifa uses this. They call it a de-arrest drill, where they surround the people instantly. They form a wall around them to prevent them from getting arrested. This is Joel Altman is running an Antifa training right here. Ken Byer admitted to engaging in an Antifa tactic at the state convention. This is very significant. Later on in this training, I've showed the video in other shows and podcasts in the past. Joe Altman goes on to say that their wives should get no peace, their families should get no peace, their friends should get no peace. Meaning, do everything you can. Just like this is just like Maxine Waters has said the exact same thing. This is a leftist tactic in order to try to, and these people are leftists. This is not conservative. This is not what the Republican Party should be standing for at all. This is not Republican behavior. But this is what Joel Altman and David Clements, and really this is part of the whole Flynn network. And so let us move on here. So what happened after that kneeling? Finally, when the police came, then they removed her, and there was a little bit of a shoving match, and I went into that and I broke that down at length in another episode. But I didn't get a chance to show you what happened after that. So
and I'm here to help a candidate.
Okay, so this is Christina Caramo, and just look at her face here. Okay, so she was just removed. This is in the lobby of the building, and the police are surrounding her. They're trying to get her to go out and to leave the building, and we'll see what happens next here.
Let's keep walking. Hey, Craig, how are you?
You can look at how her face lights up here and this big smile. This Craig that she's talking about is a reporter from the Detroit News, and she's.
So Pete Hoekstra wants me to run the convention. I'm here to support a candidate. Y'all can walk and talk. Yep.
We want that credential is our property. Okay. We're going to want that back before she leaves the property.
So I'm here to support a candidate. Pete Hoekstra and his stuff.
So listen, what I'm not going to do is have everybody cry.
I did not cause any disruption.
All right, let's follow right out the door.
Not cause any disruption, right? All right. Well, I'll just let you.
I didn't do anything wrong. All I did was walk in and try to support the candidate, and now they want me thrown out. And this is why the Michigan Republicans.
She was not trying to support the candidate. She was clearly disrupting the meeting. She was asked by the chair not to vote. She was asked. There were other people around her, allegedly, who were also not delegates. They were asked not to vote, and they were anyways. They were doing so illegally. They were violating the bylaws. And then she refused to leave. She was offered a different credential, a guest credential. She could have sat in the stands. They tried to offer another solution. She refused. She said she wanted to go wherever she wanted, whenever she wanted. And there were the people I talked to, the sergeant at arms, and they believed that what she was intending by that was that she actually wanted to go and to try to confront Pete Hoekstra and others, and really to further disrupt the convention, which she very clearly did. She was leading the booing of Pete Hoekstra. She was leading. There was a lot of disruption that was happening all around her. She was the center of attention. People were chanting, "Christina, Christina." It was her presence in every way was disruptive, in every possible way. So she is completely being dishonest about this. And further, really what she's doing is defaming the party. This was her objective from the beginning, and we'll see what the outcome was of this.
People yelling, booing. Why? Because of the corruption.
Excuse me, make a row here. Credential.
Because it's the corruption in the party. So she clearly is trying to take out.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Christina.
Trespassing.
No, so you see what's happening now. I've done nothing wrong. Not if the police grabbing on me. You see, I'm not violent. Okay. I have my hands in the air. I'm holding my arms in the air. I'm walking. Why are you harassing me? This is police brutality. This is police brutality. You see how they're harassing me? No, because he's grabbing on my arms. I'm holding my hands
You
up.
are resisting.
So no, I'm resisting. My arms are in the air. So what I'm doing is I'm here to support a candidate. Yes.
Okay, so then what she did from here is she went from one reporter to the next. She was doing this. This was just purely a photo op. This is what she was running here, was a photo op. And the police asked her to leave. She said that she, after this, in talking with the sergeant at arms, they asked her to leave. She said that she was going to go to her car. And instead of going to a car, she was wandering around the parking lot talking to reporters as she went. So her whole objective here was to talk to reporters, to make a scene, to get kicked out, to get this shot, this hands up, don't shoot shot. And then she was walking around with reporters. The police said, "Where's your car?" And she says, "Oh, well, I got a ride. I don't have a car." So she lied to the police about what she was doing so that she could talk to the reporters more. They ended up escorting her off of the parking lot altogether, said that if she set foot in the parking lot again, she would be arrested for trespassing. And then she went out and she put up videos about how she's a victim of the whole thing. And it's just ridiculous. Adam at Rescue Michigan, thanks for joining. He says, just found an article on Gideon 300 and Altman from a blog, Colorado Pulse, which ties the Gideon 300 to Ottawa County, meaning Ottawa Impact. Yes. So there is another organization that they claim is separate, and you can see their website. It's thegideon300.com, all spelled out. And there's some real gems on there. There's some connections. They have links to Mickey Klon, who is a fraud of a common law sovereign citizen person, and she's very closely connected with Ann Vandersteel, who is one of Flynn's right-hand people. And so there's a lot on that Gideon 300 thing, and they say that it's a separate organization. Joe Altman and David Clements claim that they have nothing to do with that, although they have run trainings together, and it is run by the Ottawa Impact. The local group there is run by the Ottawa Impact. The website's full of gems. It's crazy stuff. But really, where this was all going was so this happened on a Saturday, this convention. And then on Monday, 2 days later, there was a coordinated hit piece. There was a coordinated hit by all of the media on the left. And it started within 2 hours on Monday evening, Rachel Maddow did a piece, New York Times, Washington Post, probably the LA Times. It was throughout the leftist, the mainstream media. They put out stories about how the Republican Party is fighting against itself. And here is just the last little bit from Rachel Maddow.
I mean, who knows? One person who says she is still the chair of the Republican Party in Michigan was escorted out of that party's state convention by cops this weekend while fists flew. Another person who says he's still the chair of the Republican Party in Colorado was voted out by the other Republicans, but he says their vote doesn't count, and he has the letterhead to prove it, and he's still the real chair, and he'll convene his own meeting this upcoming weekend, and then everyone will see who's really in charge. Doesn't it seem like a great idea to put those folks and that party in charge of the whole country?
All right, and that's the punchline, right? So this was very clearly an operation to defame and harm the Michigan Republican Party by Christina Caramo and the people around her, which includes others. But I want to get to, because one of the things that I've been personally attacked the most on is my criticisms of Christian nationalism. Christian nationalism, in my view, is not Christian and it's not constitutionalist. These people, they're trying to rebrand themselves as constitutionalists, but they are clearly, not constitutionalists. and I want to just provide an example of that from Christina Caramo's own website. So here it is. And this is her landing page. So you go to ChristinaCaramo.com and this is what you get. I'm going to read you just a little bit of this. It opens with Matthew 22, 36 through 39. It says, which is, teacher, which is the great commandment of the law? And he says, and Jesus said to him, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. According to Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, this is our duty on earth, which of course it is. And I would absolutely agree with that. And then she goes on to say, to twist this. She says, the last 7 years of her life, and most recently, my time as chairwoman of the Michigan Republican Party, have opened my eyes to the depravity of mankind like never before. I see now why humans deserve hell. And she says, witnessing firsthand or talking to others of their experience, not just in Michigan, but America and globally, of how wicked people can truly be. The lost souls of this world are destroying the lives of others. Our obedience to God requires that we fight back. But what does that look like? And she says, spread the gospel of Jesus Christ. I would agree with that. Expose the evil in our state and union. I would agree with that. And then lawfully fight evil in the respective domains God has placed us in. This is where I begin to disagree. And because of what she means by that. And this is at its core, this is where it turns. And she then goes on to explain essentially that the Bible tells us that we are therefore to actually hate our fellow man. And so she starts with Jesus' commandment to love your neighbor as you love yourself. And then she talks about how evil they are and that we're supposed to fight them. And this is at its core. She says, we're commanded here at the last line, we're commanded to confront evil in our society and to protect our children from a tyrannical government. So she's completely wrong. It's God that confronts evil. It's not us. Even in these, if you read these verses, that Ezekiel 9, Romans 1:32, I read these verses and it's God that confronts the evil. In fact, if you read the following verse after Romans 1:32, you'll see, judge not. Jesus, Paul then says, who are you to judge? So she's claiming that we're supposed to be judging and confronting evil, but it's really God that confronts the evil. We're supposed to confront, firstly, the evil within our own hearts, which they never do. And we're told also to judge by our fruits, judge people by their fruits. And so we can discern whether or not someone is walking with the Lord. If they say that they're a Christian, we can judge by their fruits and who they really are following. If they really are following Jesus, then they should be marked by love and peace and grace. They should be peacemakers in the world. Was Christina Caramo being a peacemaker there at the Michigan Republican Party? Absolutely not. She never has been a peacemaker within the Republican Party. And everyone around her is the same way. And so this is, and in fact, to protect our children from a tyrannical government, that's not the point of Isaiah 39 at all. That's not at all. In fact, we're supposed to submit to our governing authorities, even if they're tyrannical. That's Romans 13. And, but she definitely won't be reading that. And if she does, she'll be trying to add something into it that's not even there to try to say, oh, well, that doesn't really mean that. And this isn't just about Christina Caramo. This is really about the whole Christian nationalist movement and nationwide, which Mike Flynn is very much involved in through the Reawaken Tour, through other projects that I'm going to be talking about more in the future, but in particular, Remnant Alliance. Just a few weeks ago, about a month ago, Mike Flynn and Laura Logan were the keynote speakers at an event for Remnant Alliance, where 500 pastors spoke. I just spoke earlier today with someone in California who's been dealing in her small county in California with a group that is all centered around a local church. And this is the way I've seen it. It's here in Michigan. There are churches that promote this brand of Christian nationalism. Their parishioners are known for being chaos agents, disruptors, and being hateful towards other Republicans. And this is not the way Christians should be known. And I find this extraordinarily concerning. And I want to provide one more example here of Christina Caramo as, walking her talk here. And what is the outcome of this? Now, this is an audio recording from one of her first public speaking engagements after she was removed by a court because she was unwilling to step down herself once she was removed by the state committee on January 6th of this year. For 2 months afterwards, she continued to pretend that she was the state chair, spending, as far as I can tell, about a couple $100,000 of the party money during that time, really just blowing it and spending it on attorneys to fight her removal and all kinds of other things, and leaving the party ultimately in much more debt than it was when she took it on. So after the judge finally removed her, this was one of her first speaking engagements. This is at a stand-up Michigan event in Oakland County. And she is talking here about Ann Delisle, who's the District 8 chair. She is one of the hardest working people in the state party. And she just works tirelessly to elect Republicans. She's one of those kinds of people that we need more of. She's a go-getter, a self-starter. And so she's making false claims about her, but let's just listen to Christina's words right here.
And these people are pathological liars. Pathological, just flat out lie. Sip their line. And why am I bringing these stories? It's not pettiness. And it makes me so bad. I have another story about her lying. Why? And again, I'm not doing this out of pettiness because I want to call people out. We need to understand what's happening. I'm coming full circle with it. She sent out an email CCing myself to me and added 25 people to the email, falsely accusing me of being silent about the 16 electors. And I responded back to the email. Now, any adult, if I have a problem with something you're doing, I'm going to email you one-on-one. I'm not going to CC 25 people in the email. Then, on top of that, she accused me of being silent on the 16 electors. I said,
okay, so the accusation here that Ann Delisle was making was a true accusation, which is that Christina Caramo, did really nothing of her own accord to help the alternate electors who were indicted and persecuted here in Michigan. Our alternate electors were I think that they were the first in the whole country to be indicted. And she did nothing to help them. And there was a lot of desire to help them. And she's claiming that was a false accusation, but she really did nothing. She showed up at an event that someone else organized, because had she not shown up at that event as the state chair, it would have looked pretty bad for her. And so here we go.
Number one, that's not true. And then I also sent a picture of myself at a fundraiser for the 16 electors standing next to the man whose campaign she ran for Congress, along with Justin Barclay. Do you think she apologized and said I was wrong? No, she just went to spreading her next slide. Now, why is this relevant? She will tell you she's a Christian. I will tell you the fake Christians in our party make my blood boil. There are so many people in our party who engage in acts of evil. We're talking about adultery and everything else, and they claim to be Christians. And then what's going on in our party, we have to remember, many people in this room I love dearly, some of you I don't know. But we have allowed in our party our desire for friendship to go above righteousness. And we see people in our party engaging in evil, but we say nothing. That's my friend. I like them. They're nice people. I don't want to say too much. I enjoy them. And we know they're engaging in evil, but we do nothing. What does Romans 1 tell us? If we see people engaging in evil and we do nothing, we're complicit. And what they've done, they got a bunch of fake Christians to kind of organize their effort, because with all of us being such strong believers, they had to get fake Christians. So
I'm sharing this because this should be instructive no matter what state that you're in. I'm sure you have heard this exact kind of rhetoric from someone else. And I'm going to let her go a little bit further because she goes even further off the rails. But what she's saying is that we're the only Christians. Everybody else is fake Christians because we say so. And this is completely in opposition to Scripture. This is not the way that Christians ought to behave. This is not the way the Bible tells Christians to behave. We're not to be our neighbor's judges. We're not the ones that discern whether or not someone is truly saved. I mean, we should be discerning about that, especially with ourselves. We should be working out our own salvation with fear and trembling, as Paul writes in Philippians. But we're not to like sit here on a pedestal and say we're the real Christians and everybody else is fake Christians. That's not Christianity, what she is doing here. And I cannot believe that there are so many people in this room that are sucked into this and again, amen and cheering and applauding, because this is what she is representing here is not Christianity.
I want to tell you some stories very quickly to prove the point of what we're dealing with. Why would this woman who claims Christ just lie like that? Number one, she clearly doesn't feel hell. Because the Bible tells us the liars will be thrown in the lake of fire. And, you know, when I took this position of chair, I realized more than ever why lying, because I used to kind of go, I know lying is wrong. Well, why does someone need to be thrown in the lake of fire for lying? That seems kind of intense. But after this position, not just me, but people like Phil, Lori, many people in this room, I've watched their personal reputations get destroyed by these people who claim Christ.
Okay, so Christina Caramo destroyed her own personal reputation by not doing anything that she said that she would do when she campaigned, by kicking out everybody who could do anything, anybody with any talent within the party, bringing in people without any talent that were just interested in their own personal power, and then draining the party of all of its financial resources, not avoiding any communication with President Trump, and so much so that President Trump was actually planning on running all of the pass-through funds for the Michigan State Party through Illinois if Christina Caramo was not removed. So I mean, this is just, and here she is saying that we're the only good Christians. All of these people are evil. This is the same thing that the left does. This is the same thing that's resulted in 2 assassination attempts. The left is constantly demonizing their opponents, and this is a leftist insurgency within the Republican Party. And everyone who identifies with it, even if they think they're a conservative, they are functionally a leftist. If they are promoting blind rhino hatred, if they are unwilling to engage in the hard kind of conversations to discern what is true and what is not, they are a functional leftist. And this is, from everything about Christina Caramo here, is projection. Aaron's Rod, who I know to be one of the indicted alternate electors here in Michigan, says she did nothing to help, didn't even call KK. Christina Caramo is a liar. And yes, I have spoken with 3 different alternate electors. She never called a single one, and at least of the ones that I've spoken to. And there was never any effort to help at all from her. So much so that one of them actually went and spoke to, and she was at the in January, February, shortly after all this happened. I think it was early February. There was an RNC, a big RNC meeting, and Steve Bannon was there. And one of the alternate electors approached Steve Bannon and told him that that Christina Caramo was not who she said she was, and she never supported them at all. And there's a picture of him while she was saying this to him, and you can see the shock on his face, which is, I think that's pretty interesting. And Restore Grace says she's wicked and harsh and judgmental. Absolutely. And this is not how, I mean, very, very clearly, this is not how Christians are to be known. And so this, I would urge anyone who is involved in this, anyone who believes, who has been within this organization that has brought on this belief that they are the only righteous people within the party, and everyone else who is not part of their cult is, and it very clearly is a cult. I urge you to repent and turn away from this. I urge you, for the sake of your soul, repent and turn away from this. There is freedom outside of this. This is slavery. What Christina Caramo, what Ken Buyer, what this whole group is doing within the Michigan Republican Party is slavery. And it's the same thing in Florida. It's the same thing in Arizona. It's the same thing in Idaho. It is slavery. And so I want to share where this is going even further. This is a message that Ken Buyer just put out, and I'm just going to play some parts of it here.
This is an urgent message for our real president. President Trump, my name is Ken Byer. I'm your Michigan Congressional District 4 chairman. For the last 4 years, I have been tirelessly fighting for you and election integrity. I was one of the producers on the documentary, Let My People Go, that gave a comprehensive report on the stolen elections. It's important for you to know that the rhinos who have abandoned you and left you hanging dry after the 2020 election are now working with Democrat Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson to sabotage you in the 2024 election. Pete.
Okay, so all of the rhinos that aren't a part of their group are now apparently working with the Democrats, according to Ken Byer. And here we go. So
Hookster's appointee for general counsel of the Republican Party, Representative Mike Bishop, called the Detroit Free Press after your presidential debate and told them that he was totally disgusted when you brought up the stolen 2020 election. The lawyer for the Michigan Republican Party was so disgusted with you that he turned his television off and then called the press and told them all about it. Who does that? Why?
So I agree with Ken Byer on this. This was very wrong of Mike Bishop to do this. And further, and he goes on to explain, Mike Bishop got involved with this. I think it's like Center for Democratic Integrity or something. I'm not exactly sure what the name of it is, but it's a so-called bipartisan group, but it's really a Democrat group that's whose mission apparently is to confront election disinformation. Adam, thank you. It's the Center for Defending Democracy. I think that is correct. And so Mike Bishop, who is the state party general counsel, went and signed on with that organization. And I think it was a very unwise choice. And everybody that I've talked to in the party agrees that was a very unwise choice on his part. It's very unfortunate that he made that choice. It was a huge mistake. I don't know if he sees it as a mistake. I don't know. He goes on to try to bring Pete Hoekstra into this because he thinks Pete Hoekstra is satanic. He has said so on multiple occasions that he thinks that Pete Hoekstra is satanic. And I agree here with Adam. It's shameful on Bishop's part. I just, it's not something that I would even begin to defend. And I think that he actually, it's the exact opposite direction of what he should be doing, especially in a state that's so important that we win. And especially in a state where in the last election, 200,000 Republican voters that are normal, consistent voters just didn't even show up and vote because largely, in my view, because of all of the false narratives that Ken Byer and David Clements and Joe Oltmann and all these people push out there. I call it the machine fraud psyop. And so that is a big part of this. So there is one thing that I would say, and this isn't even necessarily in Mike Bishop's defense, but I do think that this is kind of in defense of even Democrats pushing back against this, and even Merrick Garland. We see this pattern here where Merrick Garland, he's been out talking about how election workers are being threatened. Stephen Richard in Arizona, the Maricopa County recorder, there's been a couple people indicted and gone to jail for death threats against him. And there are other examples of that. He's like the big shining example that they put up on the Hill. But there's some coordination, I believe, between the Flynn group and the left. And we're seeing that another example of that is ranked choice voting. In Idaho and Arizona, where the state parties have kicked out everyone who is left of their cult, who's just not part of their cult. They've either kicked them out of the party, they've threatened, harassed, intimidated, and to the point that so many have quit. They have overtaken the party. They've actually forcibly removed people, as I've documented. And it's very similar in Idaho. Dorothy Moon has done pretty much the same thing in Idaho. And it just so happens that in both states, ranked choice voting is on the ballot in both of those states, because Republicans even feel like they don't have a say, especially in Idaho. they feel increasingly like they don't have a say within their own party if they're not a part of the cult. And so they create the problem, and then the solution on the left is a knee jerk and is not a good solution. But there seems to be some synergy between the two groups, and it's and the same thing is happening here, where Ken Buyer is a part of the problem. Gideon 300 is a part of the problem. They are telling people to harass, intimidate their election workers. I recorded, and I've mentioned it many times, Donna Brandenburg, she claims to be a close personal friend of General Flynn. She told me on a recorded call that they're training people to go around the state and tell their clerks that they need to get rid of the election machines or goodbye to you. And this is just really problematic. So and where this is going, let me just do the last 20 seconds or so of this video.
We don't need your money. We don't want a trip to Mar-a-Lago. We just want you to utilize the election integrity champions that you desperately need in Michigan for a victory in November. We are the hands and feet of Jesus, the discarded boots on the ground that can help you win your election. May God bless you, Mr. President. The storm is upon us. Keep your eyes on Jesus.
Okay, so in light of everything else that we've shared, I think it's pretty clear that these people, and we see the same thing in every other state that I've looked at, they all claim to be the election integrity experts. And they've really taken over, they've railroaded the entire election integrity movement. They are the reason why after in 2021, polls showed that 60% of Americans wanted mandatory voter ID and requirement of citizenship to vote. And it was even more than 60. It was a huge number, but we don't have it yet. And the reason why we don't have it yet is because of these people. They make it look so crazy. They've made the entire election, by focusing on lies, by focusing on the machine fraud and PSYOP, they have turned away, and by being just so grotesque like this, saying, keep your focus on Jesus. No, this is supposed to be like, this is politics. And Jesus said, render unto Caesar what is Caesar, and unto God what is God's. Jesus himself created the secular state. Until Jesus returns, we're not going to have a truly Christian nation, because we're not going to have a nation of all Christians. It's just not going to happen. And so, and they're creating this storm and it's just crazy. Lauren says, in that storm, the apostles were not expected to do anything except not get discouraged. They were supposed to stop. They were not supposed to stop the storm. That's exactly right. Our role as Christians is to trust in the Lord, not to try to take control and kick everybody out that we don't like. I mean, it's just crazy. And yeah, it is all a mess, and they've created that mess deliberately. And here Ken Byers tried to appeal to Trump, which they are always doing. They're always trying to appeal to Trump, saying, we're your best supporters. We're the true election integrity experts. Come to us, trust us. Trump already did that by trusting, he put some level of trust in Mike Flynn and Sidney Powell and all of them, Patrick Byrne, after the 2020 election. And they were trying to get him to sign the Insurrection Act. Had he signed the Insurrection Act, it would have been the complete and total end of Trump's political career and of MAGA. They were trying to destroy MAGA. They were trying to make this a one-party state. And that's what they're still trying to do with all of their work within the Republican Party. So that is Ken Buyer. That is Christina Caramo. That's what's happening as far as this group. And then there's this whole other group. And Joe Brandis is now in he's waiting very patiently, and he's about to come on. But I just wanted to share this. This is another aspect to what's happening here in Michigan and across the country, which is the America Project. The America Project was formed in 2020, and it was the vehicle for all of that deception, trying to get Trump to sign the Insurrection Act, making up out of thin air fake evidence that promoted the machine fraud narrative that was later debunked. And there's a great deal of it. The whole Tina Peters thing, I've gone into some depth about that, how there is nothing that Tina Peters did that actually exposed fraud, exposed vulnerabilities, but there's nothing that she did that exposed fraud. But we already knew that there were vulnerabilities in machines. So the America Project, though, is central in that, and they are still central in this operation within the state parties. And I've seen connections, financial connections, and personnel connections between Patrick Byrne, Joe Flynn, Mike Flynn, and others within the America Project sphere of influence. This right here at the bottom, on the bottom right of this graphic, is from their most recent 990, which I think was 2022, and it shows Joe Flynn and Patrick Byrne as being the directors. And there are operatives. There's an operative here in Michigan. His name is Jason Ikes. He has worked with the America Project from the beginning, and he is kind of like a second Mike Labadie. And there's a group of people that he is using and manipulating to create division and chaos, just as Ken Buyer does, but they're doing it from a different angle with a different marketing strategy towards a different target market. And this is what they do. And so anyone who is trying to create chaos and division, especially right now at this time before the election, we just need to ignore them, and we need to focus on what is good. And so, and what we can actually do. Now, I'm going to bring on Joe Brandis. Thank you so much for coming on, and I'm so glad you're here. I don't know how much you were following of what I said, but I
wish I wouldn't have been following that, Scott. It did not brighten my day.
You're going to brighten everyone's day now. I figured I'd dig a hole and then you get us all out of it. And I want to dig just a little bit deeper, because this is going to set the table, I think, even more for what you're going to talk about. And that is this right here, which is this is a tweet that I think it was just yesterday. I actually found it because Joe Flynn shared it this morning or last night, and it's from someone in Pennsylvania named Tony Shoop or Shoopy. And it says, "Brutal truth nobody wants to hear. I get asked this question on a daily basis. Can Trump win Pennsylvania? Just a warning, if you're MAGA or Maha, you're not going to like the answer. The Trump campaign on the ground here is a hot mess. They've hired all young kids who just graduated college and are looking for a career in politics. Being able to add worked the 2024 Trump campaign to their resume is why they're doing it. This isn't a put down to any of them. They're good kids doing the best they can, but they have no clue what they're actually dealing with." And there are a lot of, and Joe, you and I have talked about this. There's a lot of issues with the data that Republicans have available to us. There's a lot of issues with the various organizations that claim to be doing ballot chasing and doing other get out the vote efforts that don't seem to be doing it. There's a lot of blame going around. And so you have, and as we've been talking, you've seen that, and you've investigated all of these things. You bought the apps, you paid for the apps that had to be paid for, you downloaded the apps from Turning Point and from others, and you've been testing them, and you've been looking at the data, and you found some problems. So what did you find if you could talk just for a minute about what you believe the state of the current Michigan State Party get out the vote efforts are, and the various organizations that are out there? Would you agree with her assessment, first of all, and Tony's assessment that, we've got a state party, we've got Trump Victory, we've got the RNC. There are some issues.
Well, there's definitely issues, but I think, I've been through a number of campaigns, and there's always a lot of issues, and sometimes it looks kind of bleak, but we're looking at it from our side. I think if you look on the Democrat side, they're probably not doing all that great either. So I'm going to try and cheer people up a little bit and talk about a ballot chase program. So I think it's one of the most important things we could be doing. So, to start in 2022, we had Prop 2, which set the stage for where we are going forward. And it is what it is. So we have to deal with it. So we now have no excuse absentee ballots. You have 40 days early voting with absentee ballots. You have 9 days of in-person voting as a minimum. And so because of that, it's no longer election day, it's election season. And that actually starts on Wednesday of next week. The ballots start coming out. So it's our first shot at getting people that are voting. So in my mind, the most important thing we'd be doing is going after the people that are voting now. You'll still have time for the early voting. So I see it almost like 3 seasons right now. It's the time to go after the absentee voters. Then you've got the early voting, in person 9 days before, and then November 5th, you have the day of the election. So that's kind of the backdrop for it, and it is what it is. The Democrats know what they're doing, and they're pretty happy with where they're at. The Republicans, however, I don't think we've moved quick enough and realized that we have to do something now, and we have to start matching their ground game. So it's right now it's that.
Right. What I see, and here's even another example of it right here is there's just so much, and this is Barry Altman's a good man, I've talked to him a few times, but I think he's voicing something that's out there, which is why we're seeing a lot of dysfunction in the organizations, and we're waiting for somebody to and I think all of us to some degree are waiting for somebody to tell us what to do and where to go. I mean, we live busy lives. We're earning a living for our families. We're doing, we're doing stuff. And so to try to reinvent the wheel and figure out what we're supposed to be doing for almost all of us, it's just not realistic. But Warren replies here, and this is Warren Carpenter, who's, he works for the state party. He says it's scarcity of resources, volunteers, and capital. That's what's really going on. Barry says, why can't conservatives get together? And this is his answer: because of scarcity of resources, volunteers, and capital. And then he says, don't be looking for a boss to tell you, get out there and cook. And I think that that's exactly what you've done, Joe, is you've said, all right, well, I'm just going to get out there and cook. And
yeah, I couldn't agree more with what Warren's saying there. Is I've been to meetings where he said, well, what's Trump going to do in Michigan? What's Trump going to do in Detroit? What's the party going to do? We've just got to go out and do it. We work hard to become a precinct delegate. Then we sit around waiting for somebody to tell us what to do. So I did. I waited around a little bit. But I realized that I thought that going after the absentee ballots and getting the ballot chase program was the most important thing we could do. So there's, do you want me to go through the steps now of that, or what would you like me to cover next?
Yeah. So first, you saw a need. And so I do want to talk specifically about the need. I mean, Turning Point has claimed that they would be running a ballot chasing operation, and a lot of people waited to see what Turning Point was going to do. I know you downloaded the Turning Point app, and what was your experience with that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I was in sales my whole career. The biggest thing that we have to have is a good database. I've been after the party for forever. There's reasons there's different databases out there, but what I would encourage people to do is see what your party has already in your county, district, or you can get one from the state. But what I've been doing for years is I then cross-check the data. So typically they'll have the name, the addresses. Those are all pretty good. Where I found some real issues was on what they call political affinity. So is it a hard Republican, soft Republican, independent, hard Democrat, soft Democrat? Mm-hmm. And so, for instance, when I looked at TPUSA, I didn't agree necessarily with their strategy, but then when I looked at the data, they have a place in there where you can actually go out in your neighborhood and knock doors, and it kind of piecemeals it out to you. And I don't typically like that. I want to see all the data that I'm working with and decide where I'm going to go. So anyway, I opened up TPUSA and looked at, there was like a dozen homes nearby me. They're supposed to be low propensity Republicans or independents, was my understanding. 5 out of the 12 were hard Democrats. So, so now I kind of lost faith in what they're doing. Right. There's different types of apps out there. There's MRP Delegate is another one that was just recently released. I ran into a few issues with that. It's kind of a new app. They're working on it, but it's pretty much just set to go after AV ballots. So all I would say is, if you bought it, check the data, make sure that it kind of lines up with what you have. You can also get a database from your local clerk. So one of the things I was able to do is for the 22 primary or 24 primary in August was get the database from our local commerce clerk. And so I was able to look at that. What I've kind of settled on, which we have in Oakland County, is I-360. And I-360 has been pretty accurate on the data that I've seen. And I was able to cross-check, the political affinity, and it was pretty accurate. So that's what I found with the different databases that are out there, and that's where everything starts with the database.
Yeah, and from what I've seen with data, and I've talked to other people that have gone through and studied the different data sources. So I-360, and the constant or the most common criticism of I-360 that I've seen is that it was started by the Koch brothers, which it was. And I don't know. I think it was Charles Koch that died. And you can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but one of the two Koch brothers died, and I'm not sure that it's something that they're directly involved in at all. I don't think that that's the case, but I-360 has been around the longest, and they've also put the most resources into maintaining the data. And the challenge here in Michigan is we don't have party registration, and so the starting point for all the data is the primary voting. But there's so many Democrats that vote in our Republican primary elections that you get stuff like what you saw with Turning Point, where 5 out of 12 of those in your precinct were hardcore Democrats, because the hardest core Democrats are the ones that actually vote in the Republican primary, because it's not an inherently honest thing to do. So. Yeah, but I think I-360, from what I've heard, is the best data, at least for Michigan, because it's the most maintained. And I don't know if that's the case in other states or not. But it sounds like that's what you found.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things that you can do, and I know about the crossover voting and that, but you can, one of the things I encourage people to do is get historical data from your clerk and look at the different races. It gives you a better indication, especially in the general, as to how people are really voting. So I looked at our data I'm in commerce. We have about 50,000 people, about 34,000 voters. But the largest majority is the independent voters. About 34% was Republican, 50-some% was independents. So in the middle. And we lean a little bit red. I think there's 25% maybe with the Democrats. So it's important to know that. Now, once you settle on a database, why it's important to have the political affinity, because what you want to do when you set up a ballot chase program is only go after the Republicans and the independents and go after those ballots. So the first step is, once you get your database, what you do is you take out all the Democrats, and then you decide how you're going to approach it. You need to come up with a piece of literature. And one of the things I think is really important is, a lot of times we're pushing a candidate, and we've got to start realizing what the voter really wants. And one of the things I came upon just from personal experience is, like, even in this last primary, there's nonpartisan races out there, and there's commissioner races and different things like that. I didn't know who to vote for. Now, if you just wait till the day of the election and you don't know who you're voting for, you go to the polls and you look at it and you say, oh, I don't know who to vote for, let's say, school board, because it's nonpartisan, or the judges. So that's why a lot of times Republicans don't vote the whole ballot. So that's a big advantage that the Democrats have on the down ballot races. They can sit at home and they can call people. They can get calls from the party. They know who to vote for, and they fill the thing completely out. So you get that set up. So the piece of literature that I thought would fit that bill for the voter And it's important is they're going to be getting an absentee ballot. They're not going to know who to vote for necessarily. So they're going to be kind of scrambling, but they have time. So what I came up with is a voter guide, and I call it a conservative voter guide. It's real simple, just a single sheet. And we have all the races listed on that.
Yep.
And so that's what we're going to use for the lit drop that we're going to do as we go around and start chasing the ballots.
Yep. Yeah, I've seen in a lot of states, people complain about they call it a golden ticket, or in Arizona, sometimes they call it a copper ticket because of the copper state. And they complain that, well, the party that's been taken over by these Ken Buyer, Christina Caramo types, they're putting out a ticket that is not helpful. But you can, if you're a precinct delegate or a precinct committeeman, you ultimately, because your job is not a job to go in and hold people accountable, and you're not there for the right to vote and to try to take over the party. You're there to know your precinct and to do exactly what you're talking about doing, Joe, which is to go to your local clerk. You can ask them for the list of all the voters in your precinct, and they'll print it up and give it to you, or they'll send it to you as a Excel file or a .csv or something you put into Excel, and then you can look at that data. It's not complicated, and you can just call them up and they'll email it to you. I've done that, and it's really, I think that's a really important thing to do. And if you create that voter guide like you're talking about, then it doesn't matter what somebody else is putting out if you're the one that's knocking on the doors and giving it to them.
So in the primary in August, we only had about 8,400 people vote. So it was only a 22% turnout, but it was the weather was terrible. I don't know if you remember that. So a lot of people didn't turn out, and that's one of the issues when you wait till the day of the voting. So the Democrats, about 75% of their vote came from the AV ballots. The number of people voting was almost equal to the number of AV ballots that went out. So it's a big part of it. So it's in the AV ballots, and we have to make sure we go after that. So it really is simple. You get people to sign up for the AV ballot. So that's the first step. And I think as a party, that's what we should be doing all the time is trying to get people to get on the permanent AV list. And it's real easy to do. It takes a couple of minutes online. You can track your ballot when it comes back. So there's a lot of advantages to it. But I am convinced that's what the Democrats have been doing for years now, is just getting people to sign up for AV ballots. And in 2020, in Oakland County, on election day, if not one Democrat would have come out and voted the day of the election, they still would have won. They had it all in the AV ballots. So it's so important.
Yeah, it really is. And like you said, bad weather on the day can have a huge impact. And if just 20 people in each precinct in Michigan just don't vote on election day because the weather's bad, or they got called in for an extra shift, or they have a family emergency, or they're sick, or whatever it is, that's 100,000 votes statewide. That's just 20 people. And the likelihood that it's going to be more than 20 people, especially on a bad weather day, is really high. And so, we've got to encourage people to vote early. That's the Democrats are really in on that. They're not going to mess with that batch of ballots, those early ballots, because that's where their voters are. Those are their ballots. And so, we've got to get ours in there as well. Your vote counts whether you go earlier on election day, but especially when looking at like what I talked about earlier with Gideon 300. Last week I talked about Jovan Pulitzer and what he's doing, trying to disrupt the polling centers. The likelihood that there's going to be delays on election day, you might get there and there's lines. Maybe they have a printer problem like they did in Arizona in 2022. And you've got people like Pat Colbeck that are out there saying, no, you have to vote only on election day. Otherwise, you're going to tell them how many votes they need to steal. It's garbage, right? I mean, there's no.
So one of the things when you do the ballot chase too is I've been told that about 65% of the absentee ballots are going to be voted in the first week and a half or two. So it takes you into probably the first week of October. So you have plenty of time to go after the rest of them later on. But once those things are voted, once those ballots are gone, you lost your shot at it. So it's really important to do that. So just recognizing it's hard to get people to knock on doors. What we're doing is just going to do lit drops. And in Commerce, we have, we're going to hit about 3,500 homes with a lit drop, and that'll impact about 5,000 votes in Commerce. So if everybody would do that, get out there, just, it's easier to get people to just go around and lit drop for you. Once they have it, you can then follow up with emails, phone banks, or even knock on the door.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be the final step on the process, I think.
Okay, so to simplify and break it down, so the first step is to get some data, and so you recommend in Michigan I-360, and you can get that from your county party, right? If your county party is working with that. So, but whatever data source you got from your county party, so go to your county Republican Party. You can find out, it's easy enough to find out who your county chair is, and you should be able to find their cell phone number, give them a call, or somebody else on the executive committee. You can get that information, and then go to your clerk. And that extra step I think is valuable, of looking at, because you can get the list from your local clerk of who the AV voters are, right? And so you're getting that AV list from your local clerk, comparing that to the other data, to make sure that it's accurate. And you're looking for specifically there, you're looking for inconsistencies. You're looking for what exactly when you're looking at comparing those two lists?
Well, the one thing you don't see on the list that you'll get from your clerk is the political affinity. So if you get that information, you can match it up with what you have on your other lists. So what I'm planning on doing is, the data I have is AVs, and it is independents and Republicans on the list that I'm working off of. Once they have the major data dump, I am getting from the Commerce clerk. She'll be sending me the complete list of all of them that they sent out. So then I'll be making a comparison to see what's missing from the list, and then try and gather them up and also hit them.
That's great. Adam says that we, Rescue Michigan, have been making precinct voter data tools and training available for the last 4 years. He says we have voter files with party affiliation, phone numbers, turnout. That's an awesome tool. So you can go to I think it's rescuemichigan.com. If I'm wrong about that, Adam, you're welcome to send it to me. I'll put it up. But, so you get the data, and then you say lit drops. So what you've been doing today, when I talked to you earlier, you were taking lit from the various campaigns. And
not really. No, just the voter guide.
Okay.
And then just stuffing them in some bags. And so then now coordinate with all the different precinct delegates. So we're all working together across Commerce. So there's 38 of us. And then we're going to set up times to go out and hit the doors.
Great. What I've seen as I've been looking at states is that there's between 150 and 500 doors per precinct delegate nationwide. And so whatever the precinct is, that sometimes they call them precinct delegates, PCs for precinct committeeman, PCPs and subset, whatever it is, or precinct captain even, there's a certain number of doors that are within your district there, your precinct. And it's a manageable number is the point. I mean, if you do, if you're knocking on doors, 100 a day is, it depending on how many get answered, but on a Saturday you should be able to do 100 in a day, right? And so if you've got 400 doors in your precinct, that's, if you just take half of every Saturday leading up to the election, you should very easily be able to knock on every single one of those doors. And as you do so, then you are finding out too which of these are Democrats, which are Republicans, which are independents, which ones are voting AV. And so you're actually gathering data that is granular and very, very valuable. So, and so all you're doing is just dropping that lit, and you say that by dropping, working together, and it's really because you took the initiative. It's you weren't waiting for anybody else to do anything. There's nothing magic about this. You just printed up on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper a voter guide,
right,
for all the races, and then you contacted all of your other precinct delegates and said, hey, let's go out on one day and let's just drop all this lit. And you can do that in an evening, even just in a couple hours, with 38 people. So 3,500 doors. So
the other thing is, and I really think it's just it's a matter of somebody just leading and organizing it. If you do that, then there's other people that will volunteer too. So there's other organizations around, and I know people are frustrated. They want to volunteer, they want to do something, but if there's nothing organized and you don't have a plan to do this, then it's hard to keep the volunteers active. So it's another benefit to just grabbing it, running with it. It's simple. It's something a precinct delegate can do. And honestly, I think the AV, registration and then chasing the ballots that's what the future is going to be. And if we match them, we always do better on the day of the election. So that's what we got to do.
Absolutely. Well, Joe, thank you so much. I appreciate your leadership and what you're doing for your township and for your precinct, and showing us. I think that this is the future. If the Republican Party has a future, it's because people like you step up and actually take on the responsibilities of the position without being concerned about your rights. And that's, I think that's what the Republican Party really should be about. And it's just like Warren said, stop waiting for a boss, stop looking for a boss, just get out there and start cooking. And so you're cooking, and we appreciate it. And this is so simple. It's just get some data. You can get it. If you're in Michigan, go to Rescue Michigan. There's other, you can go to your local county. There's a lot of different sources that you can go for some data. Just get something. That's the point. Just get something, and print up an 8.5 by 11 voter guide. It's super simple, just with all the races on your ballot there. And especially the ones that are nonpartisan, because that's really helpful. And you don't even have to knock on doors. You could just drop them, put them in a bag like this, and just drop them. And your total cost is very little in doing that. For 3,500, what's your total cost to distribute it among 38 different PCs? And maybe your county party will help you pay for that. So this is a really, really easy thing. And you can do this. If you're listening right now, you can do this in the next week. You can get your data today. You can contact all the PCs or precinct delegates over the next couple days. You can put together some, a voter guide, and then you can just set a date in a few days, maybe on Saturday, maybe this weekend coming up, and drop all that lit. And ballots are just about to go out here in Michigan just next week. This is the perfect timing to do this. And this is how we win. Doing exactly what you're doing. We can win Michigan. We win Michigan. Trump is going to be in the White House. It's that simple. So we can do this. All of this noise, everything that I was showing you at the beginning of this episode, it is noise. I'm pointing out all of the people who are doing everything except for and trying to prevent us from doing exactly what you've been doing, Joe. So this is how we win. Let's get out there and do it. Do you have any final words? How can people get a hold of you on social media, or what's the?
Yeah, anybody wants to get a hold of me, they can send my email, jbrandis@comcast.net. It's probably the best way. I'd be happy to work with anybody on what you have to do to get this set up. If you're in Oakland County, it's pretty easy. We've got the data, but if you can get the data, I'll work with anybody, because time is short and we need to get out there and hit as many as we can. So anything I can do to help, just contact me.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you, Joe. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And until next time, next show is Wednesday at same time. So we'll see you then. Thanks.